Well, let's get another perspective on this continuing war, this grievous Israel-Gaza war at its 6-month mark. We can cross to London to join Husam Zomlot, who heads the Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom. Husam Zomlot, as you know, that even Israel's staunchest allies, including the UK, where you are now, are putting pressure on Israel, on Prime Minister Netanyahu, to move towards a ceasefire. Do you see this as a possible turning point in this war?
Hello, Lise. So far, I haven't seen that pressure from the UK, the US, or the rest of the international community working on Israel. Who would have imagined, Lise, 6 months on after this genocidal aggression, and we're still talking about the genocide? Who would have imagined that, after the first child, the world would be shocked? 100 children, 1,000 children, 10,000 children, Palestinian children, the world would be shocked. And now we are more than 100,000 maimed and killed, mostly women and children. So what kind of pressure are we talking about? The UK, the US have leverage tools, including an immediate embargo on arms that end up in the bare bodies of our children, have leverage like suspending Israel's membership in the UN because it has already violated the UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate fire, which the UK voted for. So therefore, genocidal Israel is not the discussion here. The discussion is the rest of the world, and what the rest of the world is going to do, and what are the consequences on all of us after the normalization of the mass murder of children, the normalization of the mass destruction of an entire population, the erasure of an entire people by the use of famine and disease as weapons of war. We are on the 21st century, and I believe the consequences of us will be severe. And I believe the world, especially the West, has got to think seriously now, not just about Palestine and what is happening, but about the whole lot of international rules, international system. When will be the next war against who, whose children, whose schools, whose hospitals, and how bigots all over the world are going to use this moment when Israel has normalized such utter scenes that dent our humanity. So I'm sorry to tell you, Lise, whatever lip service we are hearing from London or from Washington, it's not working.
We understand, though, that pressure is being put on the negotiating teams in Cairo, pressure on Hamas, pressure on Israel from their respective allies to come to a deal for swapping hostages in Gaza, for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, and to achieve a humanitarian pause, a ceasefire. What are you hearing? Are you hearing that there's now a greater chance those talks can succeed?
Well, these talks have been ongoing for a long time, and there has been an international formula. The US is involved for a hostage exchange, for an immediate permanent ceasefire. That formula has been rejected by Netanyahu. It is very clear, Lise. Netanyahu wants a perpetual aggression on Gaza. He needs war, and if it's not even in Gaza, he's going to Lebanon, to Syria, he's provoking in the West Bank. This Prime Minister of Israel lives on aggression, lives on confrontation. And therefore, we are not hearing very promising news so far. The leverage of the rest of the world has not been exercised, despite all the statements we have been hearing, and still Netanyahu is preparing for an invasion of Rafah. He has declared it many times. You know the consequences, the untold stories and suffering that would be caused if he does so. And the plan is very clear. Netanyahu and the Israeli government want to push the Palestinians out of Gaza. They have already turned Gaza unlivable, Lise. It is unlivable. The sheer level of destruction that has occurred in Gaza is unmatched, unprecedented. And therefore, Netanyahu is maneuvering by saying that he is engaging in negotiations. He's outmaneuvering his internal rivalries. He's outmaneuvering his allies in the US and the UK and elsewhere. And he is just waiting to buy time for that moment when he is capable to push mass number of Palestinians out of their homelands. That's the plan. Otherwise, how do you explain the policy? How do you explain what they're doing in the north of Gaza? How do you explain targeting of humanitarian aid workers. How do you explain the famine and what have you? The plan is being executed. What happens in Cairo and elsewhere for Netanyahu is just distraction, gaslighting, and sideshows.
Well, the international community would say that they are putting pressure. The Qataris would say, and the Egyptians are doing what they can. They're also focused on what's called the day after. The United States working with neighbors like Jordan, Egypt, also Saudi Arabia, but also with the Palestinian Authority about coming up with a plan. The Palestinian Authority, there's now a new government, a new prime minister. Is the authority going to do more, and that's what's being asked, to move away from what is a widely discredited, as you know, unpopular authority into something that both Palestinians can accept, but also that Israelis feel can help guarantee their security?
So the Palestinians have sufficient national institutions. We have just formed a government made of technocrats capable of providing for our people in Gaza, the West Bank and Jerusalem, capable to unite our territory and polity. And you all have been following that. The issue is not Palestinian. It is not Palestinian. And to reduce the whole thing into what Palestinians are going to do in the day after without discussing the day before is again missing the point. I've just heard your previous interview.
But you represent the Palestinians, Husam Zomlot, in London. You're a very senior diplomat, so I'm assuming you're also thinking about what the Palestinians play their part in. Yes, of course, Israel has a huge part to play, but so do the Palestinians, if this is to work for Israelis and Palestinians.
We're ready with one government that represents all Palestinians. The PLO exists and it represents every Palestinian inside and outside. The PLO has just formed a government for the West Bank and Gaza, supported internally and internationally. We are ready. What we need to do and what this government needs to do is to visit the root cause of all this. Otherwise, we are repeating the same mistakes again. I've just heard Barak saying short wars. What he needs to look at is long peace, long-term peace, and that will only arrive when we visit the root cause of all this. Otherwise, we are sitting ducks. And these tragedies will be repeated, and not only in Palestine, but in the entire region. We have got to think about Israel's occupation. This is a moment when we turn this tragedy into a momentum to travel in a different direction. We have been traveling these directions of micromanagement, tit for tat, the Palestinians blaming the victims all the time. This is a moment when I believe there should be sufficient international energy towards one, an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Number two, a massive, unprecedented humanitarian and reconstruction efforts. Number three, accountability, Lise. We must bring those who committed war crimes to accountability, hold them accountable in the ICC and the ICJ. We need to see arrest warrants so we make sure that this is never going to happen again to our children, to your children, or any children in the world, any population in the world. Number four, sanctions. If you really want to enforce your will on Netanyahu and on Israel, it is only via sanctions, via embargo of arms, via suspension of membership in the UN of Israel, via banning settlement products and settlers from arriving to the UK and other countries, via banning the illegal companies, UK companies, from working in these illegal companies. The list is long. And also, we need to think first and foremost about the political horizon. We must give hope to the people in Palestine. We must make sure that we tell them there is a different future than the government of Israel, a different future than this reductionist discussion about a day after that will only manage the conflict rather than resolve it. This is the moment when we end the 70s of occupation colonization.
I'm so sorry, Husam Zomlot. We're coming to an end to the program. But thank you very much for joining us from London.